Saturday afternoons.
Testing. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Good evening, everyone. We sincerely appreciate you all being here tonight, and welcome to the second Blockhouse Hill Project Community Workshop, Visioning. My name is Arthur McDonald, and I'm the Director of Community Development.
And I'm Hillary Grant, Senior Planner and Heritage Officer with the town of Lunenburg. First, we want to thank you all for being here this evening, but also thank the roughly 130 people who attended Workshop 1. We'd also like to thank the 102 people, as of this evening, who filled out the Blockhouse Hill Project survey. Your input is absolutely essential. Your continued engagement is absolutely essential to the future of Blockhouse Hill, the future of Lunenburg, assuring it aligns with your values.
For those who may have missed the first workshop, a recording is available online at the town's YouTube page. We are also recording tonight's session, and we'll post it as soon as we can. A friendly reminder for everyone that the washrooms are located over to the side over here. And there's refreshments at the back of the room, prepared by the Lady Auxiliary. And I'd like to thank them very much for their hard work this evening to provide that for us. Tonight's session is longer than the first workshop. There is lots of exciting information to share, and we still need to listen and learn from you all.
So for those who might not have attended or watched Workshop 1, we're going to start tonight with a very quick, and I promise very quick, overview of why we're here and how this project will unfold over the next few months. We'll then turn the mic over to McKay Lyons Sweet Apple Architects and their team, who will review what was shared at Workshop 1. We'll also learn from the team's archaeologist, who will speak about her research. But you'll be driving the rest and the majority of the workshop, because most of the night will be spent hearing from you.
The town of Lunenburg issued a request for proposal to lead this design project on February 8, 2023. Staff recommended McKay Lyons Sweet Apple for the task. Their proposal demonstrated a unique blend of international renowned expertise in heritage and design with local knowledge and a deep commitment to our community values.
So the area included in this project is marked in green in the RFP. And I just want to reiterate that it does not include Sylvia Park. That area is destined to remain a park. And it doesn't include the Back Harbor Trail. Oh, thank you so much. It doesn't include the Back Harbor Trail. That is remaining as is. Blockhouse Hill is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site Buffer Zone, and I've been updating my colleagues at Parks Canada, who in turn report to the World Heritage Committee on and throughout this project.
We hope you're as excited as we are to continue this dialogue. We will begin exploring different visions for Blockhouse Hill. Council has not decided whether to develop these lands or to divest of them. This is not a development proposal or project. It is a community design project.
So at the next workshop, Options, McKay Lyons Sweet Apple will present 4 different options for Blockhouse Hill's future. inviting your input and suggestions once again. They will then refine these options based on your feedback. All 4 options will be presented to Council on December 12th, 2023, and anyone will be able to present at that meeting before Council as well. In the meantime, the online survey will also be open until Workshop 3 options. So anyone, regardless of whether they can attend the meetings, can share anything directly with the consulting team.
So without further ado, it is my pleasure to invite Brian McKay-Lyons to start the workshop.
No, I'm gonna have an easy go of it tonight because I'm gonna make Miranda do everything. So hi, I'm Brian McKay-Lyons, and this is Miranda Bailey, the project architect.
Hello. Thank you, Arthur and Hillary, for having us tonight, and everyone again for coming out. So we're going to start this evening by reflecting back from a month ago. I know it's a bit of a refresher. It's been some time since we all get together. So just like Hillary had mentioned, thanks again to everyone for coming out last time. We had great participation. Also thanks for all the feedback on the surveys as well as during the market booth that we had. We're continually trying to improve upon each of these workshops so that your feedback is important. There was some comments on the noise last time. We're doing our best to work on that. You'll notice you were assigned to tables when you came here, just to try and break up people maybe that don't know each other. I'm just gonna let everyone know, please be aware of the noise. I know we're in a tight space together, but try and keep the noise level down and to your own table. We've also tried to space out the tables as much as possible. We'll be floating around just monitoring the noise throughout the evening. Another bit of feedback from the first workshop was about the live broadcast or like a hybrid type workshop. Of course, you know, we have the capability to do that these days, but we don't want to lose the buzz of having everyone in the room together. So just like last time, we are going to be recording, so those that can't be here tonight will be able to watch and keep up on what's happening. And again, we'll have the survey open for feedback as well. So we're going to look back, a little bit of a reflection from the first workshop. So this is going to be a fairly high level summary. We are going to have a more detailed report that's coming out within the next month. That'll be a what we heard report. It's going to have all of the raw data from the workshops and more of the analysis. But we don't want to spend too much time on this tonight because we do want to get to the exercises that we have, again, to hear back from you. So the first question that we asked you last month, was what are some elements that make a good community? So we heard, confidence in decision makers, good communication, diversity, inclusion, and affordable housing available for locals and long-term, loving and caring and friendly, public space and a variety of public spaces, arts and culture, views, nature or natural and built, employments to live and work in your own town, healthcare and robust social services, infrastructure and amenities, climate action plan, and utilizing it. The second question that we asked throughout the evening was, how do you envision using public open space? So some of the responses we heard from that was beautiful spot to walk, all seasons. We heard summer, winter, moonrise, sunrise, unstructured space, natural space, natural trails, opportunity to enjoy natural space, habitat for local fauna, wildlife, walkways, pathways, community gardens, growing food perhaps, passive recreation, multi-uses year-round again, for all ages. There was a mention of skating, gatherings, so community gatherings, celebration spaces, and need for cultural events, space for cultural events. Oak Harbor was mentioned. Facilities, we heard about washrooms, benches, picnic tables, shade under trees, bike racks, parking. So lots of opportunities in this outdoor space. Inclusive, welcome, and accessible spaces. Learning opportunities within these public spaces. And only land used as parkland. Once it's gone, it's gone. Question 3, we asked. What are some of the challenges and opportunities that the consultant team should be made aware of? Now, we summarized this kind of into 5 subcategories. So the first of these was broken down into natural considerations. So some of the challenges and opportunities from natural considerations. A want for large public parks to compete with Bridgewater's 18 parks. Opportunities to make green space usable for all. So that's in reference to the scrub forest on the north side. A question of why we want to lose park, green space to the development. Can we do both? Preserve green space, wildlife. Natural corridor. So some of these are questions that we're going to explore further. There's a question or a challenge, I guess, of the cost of building on the slope and the infrastructure. Could it be done better or cheaper elsewhere? Maintaining views. Also, are there new views? Access to current inaccessible land. Climate change is a challenge, perhaps. And a sustainable plan. So that was all related to natural considerations. Second category we broke this down into was local government, advocacy, and accountability. There was a question on can we trust local officials to hear and follow views or regain a public trust. So a question on communication. It's been hard perhaps to access information on Blockhouse Hill. You know, moving forward, keeping goals clear throughout. Different expectations perhaps could be a challenge, or resistance to change. Keeping an open mind, open-mindedness. Common space for all. It is not the town's place to develop. And, you know, another opportunity perhaps that people in the community love and care about the place and can contribute. If it's too expensive to build in this location, is there another spot? I think that part got cut off there. Use potential tax base wisely. The third category we broke down into is housing. So this is all related to housing. Again, commenting on the affordable and accessible, making housing affordable and accessible for all. How can we do that at Blockhouse Hill? This is a bit of a spectrum from only affordable to high end. Where do we lie on the spectrum? Housing crisis must address the crisis, not be used as a sales pitch. Development costs, multiple levels from federal and provincial. And yeah, what's going to bind, this has been a question we've heard a lot, is what's going to bind the developer to the designs. High value real estate, opportunity, and a challenge to get it right. This one talks about leaving the town for a more affordable town, perhaps, could be a challenge. And housing which enables workers to live here, to stay in Lunenburg. Again, another question about the location. Could it be done better or cheaper elsewhere? And develop perhaps other sites. And the fourth category we have is identity. So there's a challenge perhaps, or an opportunity is visual compatibility and Lunenburg architecture. Harmonizing with the town heritage and scale and characteristics. A challenge perhaps is UNESCO, overlooking any Indigenous and Acadian. Maybe we're only focusing on the settlement of Lunenburg. There's an opportunity to consult, of course, with First Nation community. A challenge could be maybe there isn't a shared vision. Heritage conservation versus any future growth. What's the balance between that? And keeping residents here is important and a connection to the history of the place. Other opportunities listed, culture, history, heritage, passion, expertise, a question of who the development might be for, and variable mix of resources. There was a reference to the letter in 1994. Seems it may be very difficult to develop on Blockhouse Hill without threatening the UNESCO status. And a demonstration of social cultural evolution designed within a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So the final category we've broken challenges and opportunities into was infrastructure. Parking congestion, of course, can be a challenge or perhaps an opportunity, including public amenities for increased land use, keeping the campground, relocate, a question there. Opportunity to repurpose the campground into co-op housing, perhaps. Can the current water or sewer system handle this? That's something, of course, we're going to be exploring. Public information to know the cost and payback of the development. Again, we're going to be looking at 4 options for that. Disruption of neighbors during the build, thinking of the timeline of that and disruption, perhaps. The buffer zone, trees at the perimeter. Oh, we made it through. There's a lot to cover. So that was the first exercise. Again, we just pulled some of the common themes. Again, it's not everything, and we just wanted to highlight things to inform people that might not have been at the first workshop, just as a quick summary, looking back at the first exercise we did last time. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Julian, who's going to go through the cognitive mapping exercise, just as a quick summary, which was the second exercise we did in the first workshop. Unfortunately, Julian was not able to join us in person this time, but he's actually joining via Zoom.
Hi. So can you hear me?
1 second, Julian.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So if you go to the next slide. So at the first meeting, at the end of the meeting, we asked people to draw quick maps of Lunenburg as it exists, just the way in their imagination. It was important to us to try to understand what a community looks like from the inside, not from the outside. And I just want to share some of the findings from going through the maps. I want to thank Laura for working with me on this. So next slide. The first thing we did was a simple quantitative figuring out which items showed up on like every map, most maps, some maps. So every map shows what I guess is key to the UNESCO designation, and that is the grid plan of the old town, the wharves, and the front harbor. So that connection of the town to the waterfront and to the water is clearly important and shows up on every single map in different ways, but it's always, it's just important to know that what UNESCO designated is in fact a core image that people have. Secondary themes were the back harbor showed up on some maps, Blockhouse Hill and Lunenburg Academy on quite a few maps. A lot of the maps had recreational facilities, sailing. There were boats on the water, the trails, the golf course showed up quite often, playgrounds, the tennis courts, and then nature in various indications on the maps of natural areas. If you go to the next slide, what we call the tertiary themes are themes that showed up when people did more detailed maps, and often then you start to get into a personal understanding of a place, which again is important not on an individual basis, but on a collective basis. So Newtown shows up on a number of the maps. A number of the churches show up very clearly. Tannery Road is on quite a few. The cemetery, people show up on some of these more detailed maps. The coffee shops, the restaurants, the breweries, grocery stores, the hospital, Folk Harbor Festival, Farmers Market, Lighthouse. I wanted to show some of the images. This is the only one that was shown from the north looking south. So you see the north slope in front, then the town behind, the wharves, the water. What's interesting about this map is it begins to get into a personal connection with the place. You can see the place where the screening is, the docks on the dock, or bicycling to the tennis court. There's some people in here. And even the sunrise and the moonrise. What's interesting to us in these maps is that you start to get the way a place is lived in, which is not going to show up just on a Google map or however detailed your GIS mapping is. To go to the next slide, it shows an even more personal view. And what is interesting about this map to us is that the Academy on the upper left and the Blockhouse on the upper right are no longer using those words. It's my library, my Folk Harbor concerts. And again, this is where the individual and digital come together. And UNESCO is increasingly interested in whether communities can sustain those two dimensions as they work together, because the intangible and the tangible is what creates a cultural landscape. So this is very much that personal view, but how places are transformed in the mind. The next one. This we put in just because this is almost the basic map that a lot of people showed with the grid, the wards, the front bay, and the Academy, and the Blockhouse, and in this case, the Blockhouse with the park and the road around the park. So this is kind of a summary map in a way, even though it's just one person's map. The next one, we like this map because, I mean, the heart, I guess, means this is hopefully someone who loves Lunenburg, but even the upper parts of the heart show the topographical fact that Blockhouse Hill and Academy are on the two highest points of land, which I think is important. This is a little bit elevation as well as land. The next one we put in here for fun. I think this took about 30 seconds. I'm just very impressed. Somebody in that short time managed to capture the town, the wards, the bay. This is kind of the shorthand version. And the next slide, I think, is the last one, which, yeah, let's go back to that. We just like this. Everybody's opinion matters. And so the question is, what do we have going forward from looking at those maps? And I would say there are four things. One is that the town, its wharves, and the waterfront and the water are clearly a defining element. Secondly, the grid is surprisingly well defined in people's minds. So what happens when you get outside the grid is people shift the geometry because they know the roads become at a different angle, or they're curved, or they're natural areas, or whatever. So there's quite a strong definition. A third point is that although they're not part of the UNESCO designation, the Academy building with the open space around it and the Blockhouse with the open space around it are clearly, in some ways, as important. They bookend the grid, they bookend the town, and they show up in a lot of the maps. And so it seems fairly evident that those are places that need to be taken very seriously as defining elements within the town. So the question is, how do we ensure that they stay that way? And then fourthly, I guess, is that once you move outside the boundaries of the grid, the original grid, there's a lot of complexity. I mean, there's Newtown on one side with a different geometry. There's moving east, there's moving north to Back Bay. There's moving around Tannery Road and towards the golf course and so on. And so there's a large variety of uses outside the designated UNESCO area, some in the buffer zone, some beyond the buffer zone, but there's no single generic term you can apply. I mean, some towns have farmland, and you have farmland, and then it's clearly defined a townscape within the farmland. In the case of Lunenburg, what is outside that central area, which is well imagined in people's mind, is a whole world of different types of spaces. So I'll hand it back to you, Miranda, and I'm on audio. I will be listening to all the comments of this evening, and I look forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Julian. I'm actually gonna hand things over to Courtney. And Julian's gonna sit by here and listen the rest of the night. Thank you, Julian. All right, just get set up here. Cheat notes. Perfect. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Courtney Glenn. I'm an archaeologist with Davis McIntyre and Associates, and we are the firm that is conducting the Archaeology Resource Impact Assessment for the Blockhouse Hill Study Area. Tonight, I'm going to really briefly discuss what an archaeology assessment process looks like, what the legislation and regulation is that governs that process, and then I'll get into a brief summary of the results of our assessment to date. I just want to note that our assessment's still ongoing. It's very much a work in progress. We're very keen to hear any information that the community has. I will be floating around during the exercises. I'd be trying to stop at every table. If anyone has information, oral history, memories that they want to share, please do so. There's also a survey that will be set up where you can submit information that way, as well as attach images or photos. I'm really curious to see if anybody has in their family photos pictures of the Blockhouse Hill area throughout the 20th century, even pictures of the Tourist Bureau being constructed or the campground being constructed or what those areas looked like before would all be really deeply interesting to me. All right, so moving along, the Special Places Protection Act is the piece of legislation that covers archaeology sites in Nova Scotia. It came into being in the 1980s, and it essentially states that you can't disturb an archaeology site without a permit. The Act is administered through the Department of Communities, Culture, Tourism and Heritage, or CCTH, through a heritage research permit process. That process is overseen by the Coordinator of Special Places, who is currently John Cormier. It's his job to review permit applications and review reports, and then if he approves, if he accepts them, he will approve them. So CCH has the ability to request changes, to say your methodology needs to be different or your recommendations need to be different. They're not just rubber stamping things, they have the ability to force changes before they approve reports and permits. The Nova Scotia Museum is the repository for artifacts in Nova Scotia, so anything that we would collect under a permit would be submitted to them to curate on behalf of the people of Nova Scotia. And they also maintain a database of known archaeological sites. It's called the MARI database, or the Maritime Archaeological Resource Inventory database. At the Nova Scotia Museum, the curator of archaeology is Katie Cottrell-Robbins. She also works to review permit applications and reports. Both John and Katie are trained professional archaeologists. That is their background. I also wanted to mention them because they have a public-facing aspect to their job. If you have concerns as a member of the public about an archaeology site that's being potentially impacted by development, or you're concerned that a development didn't do archaeology, or that
you know of a site that's eroding into the ocean, or you find an artifact or a site and you want to report it, these are the people that you would contact. So they're good resources to know. The heritage research permit process involves submitting a permit application to CCTH. We have to explain what methodology we're going to use, what our study area is. We have to provide our qualifications, and then they review that and approve the permit or request additional information. There are 3 different categories of permits. Category A are issued to anybody. They are meant for a desktop research by someone who's just interested but isn't professionally trained. They can't do invasive archaeological investigation, and they can't provide recommendations. Category B are issued to professional archaeologists who are pursuing a research-driven project. So that would be your university professors, your PhD students, that type of thing. And then category C is issued to professional archaeologists who are conducting an archaeology resource impact assessment for a development or a potential development. And that is the permit that I'm holding for this project. It's also the most common type of permit issued in Nova Scotia by far. As part of your resource impact assessment, the sort of standard initial assessment, sometimes called a phase 1, includes a desktop study and then a reconnaissance or a site visit. The desktop study, just what it sounds like, it's basically before we get in the field and after we're in the field, getting as much information as possible from any source. So historic and archival information, we send information requests to KMKNO, which is the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative. They have an archaeology research division, looking for oral history, traditional use information, predictive modeling, and reviewing past archaeological research. Any information that could be useful or relevant. The second component is the reconnaissance or the site visit. So we will go in person, we will walk everywhere throughout the area in question. We take detailed notes and photographs, we record where we were with a track log, and we are specifically looking for signs of an archaeological feature or site that we can see on the surface, maybe something like a cellar or a foundation. We're looking to record past or modern disturbance within the study area. We look to record the natural environment and the landscape, and we look for areas of elevated potential, so places that we think there's potential for archaeological resources, but we can't actually see anything on the surface. So once we've completed those 2 components, then we produce a report, which is sent to the Department of Communities, Culture, Tourism, and Heritage for their review. That report would include recommendations for additional research or additional mitigation if necessary. It also sometimes includes recommendations that these areas are low potential, so we recommend further investigation. Just depends on our findings and our study area. Then CCTH will review that report, and they will hopefully approve it or request changes before approving it. And then only once they have approved it are those recommendations considered final, and then they become requirements that you have to do that if you're going to move forward with whatever that development is. All right, I'm going to jump right in to sort of brief summary of our results. I'm trying to keep it brief here because I could talk for hours about archaeology. But I want to start, of course, with the Mi'kmaq, who have been in Mi'kma'ki in Nova Scotia since time immemorial. There are archaeological sites within Lunenburg County that provide direct archaeological evidence of their occupation dating back for thousands and thousands of years. The Mi'kmaq name for Lunenburg is Asagadig, meaning at the place of clams, and there are Mi'kmaq place names all around the coast here and all through the interior. And in fact, there were shell middens noted in 1753 around the harbor. The French name for Lunenburg, Marigalash, that has its roots in a Mi'kmaq word, and there are many, many historic references to Mi'kmaq, living, conducting different activities in and around Lunenburg, Mahone Bay, LaHave, this whole area throughout the 18th and 19th centuries. And of course, Mi'kmaq people continue to live in Lunenburg and the surrounding areas today. So when the settlers arrived in 1753, they were arriving into a vast Mi'kmaq cultural landscape. This is also a huge time of conflict, of course, because the Mi'kmaq are trying to maintain access and control of their traditional territories, and the settlers are in opposition to that. So defense becomes a big concern. This is when we see the construction of different military forts and fortifications, including the Eastern Blockhouse. The Eastern Blockhouse is featured in the privateer attack in 1782. It probably sustained some damage. It might have been burned. We're still chasing down some primary sources. But if it was burned, it would have been rebuilt pretty fast. It appears in 1785 in a description of the town and also in this image. At that time, it's described as having a blockhouse, but also a small redoubt or earthwork or gun battery with 2 guns. And then in 1785, that is also when there's an official grant of the public commons, which includes the study area and includes Blockhouse Hill, and it is set aside for use as pasture or otherwise. The blockhouse fell into sort of poor condition. In 1812, it was revitalized and repaired. But then after the War of 1812 concluded, it again was sort of allowed to be neglected and fall into disrepair. At this time, the commons itself also seems to have been a little bit neglected. In the 1820s, there's an act that is put in place in 1826 to allow leases of the commons because, and I quote, the commons had run to waste and become of little value from want of cultivation. So I suspect this means it's starting to revegetate, it's being covered in scrub and brush, it's not very usable land from a pasture agricultural sense, so they're hoping that by issuing leases, they'll get people more invested and make improvements to the commons. Here. There's really very little recorded for the study area for the commons itself in the 19th and 20th century because the kind of activity that's going on there, pasture or agricultural use, is not the kind of activity that people tend to write or talk about a lot. The Eastern Blockhouse and approximately 1 acre around it continue to be kind of an island of military property in this sea of the commons. But the blockhouse continues to decay. It's just basically being used for storage by 1856, and by 1861, it's in pretty poor condition and would need a lot to fix it up. So in 1871, in October, there was a hurricane that reportedly pushed the blockhouse a little bit off of its stone foundation. But the structure itself remained intact until 1874 when it was apparently burned, perhaps by idle boys, according to one source I found. And then after that, this sort of piece of military property, the earthworks, I think were still there. It's just being left as probably open grass until 1886-87, which is when a local Lunenburg resident writes the War Department and asks if he can get a lease for that 1 acre in order to plant trees and otherwise beautify the grounds. And this is when we see in the 1880s, this is the transition from Blockhouse Hill, that 1 acre being a military property, to being a recreational and a park property. And that's a change that has persisted to today with Sylvia Park. What's really interesting to me, though, is that less than 10 years later, in 1893, right opposite this park, a county jail is constructed. We haven't been able to find a lot of details about this, so I hope someone in the room might have some information. It was abandoned in the early to mid 20th century. The building itself seems to have been demolished between 1946 and 1955 based on photos. This is also around the time, 1945 to 55, when there's a realignment of the road. So the current Blockhouse Road that winds around the sort of back of the earthwork, that is new, quote unquote new. The, I think, historic alignment would have gone diagonally through Sylvia Park on the front harbor side of the earthwork. There's also an increasing amount of recreation use in this area. So in 1921, a ball field is constructed within the study area in the area of the upper campground. And then of course, in the second half of the 20th century, we get the Tourist Bureau and the campgrounds constructed. Missing anything? All right. So that kind of brings us up to modern time. We did complete our reconnaissance last week. We were there on Wednesday, I think. We were able to locate the foundation of the county jail. So that would be an archaeology feature that we will fill out a form for and submit to the province to be registered as a site. We also found a lot of 20th century and modern garbage, including a car. So it's in really rough condition. I'm so curious how it got there. These first two photos are the foundation of the jail. I know they don't look like much, but it's just very overgrown. And then this is part of the car. We also found numerous apple trees. So there's clearly some kind of orchard in the area. I'm also curious, and maybe someone in the room knows the answer, whether this was part of an agricultural lease, like somebody owned this orchard that they were leasing on the commons, or whether it was a more common, public common orchard. Aside from apple trees, there's also a lot of thorn bushes. It's very dense brush in there. The thorn bushes are way over my head. They were extremely difficult to navigate through. It's pretty rough terrain, rocky, sloped in places, of course, little undulating. And there is previous impact, even in there from the power lines. There's impact from ditching. There's impact from the road and railway construction. And of course, the campground and the Tourist Bureau are a pretty big area of impact. So I'll just end by showing, this is a track log map of our reconnaissance. So I don't know how well it's going to show up, but the little purple lines are everywhere that we walked. And I've also flagged the Lunenburg County Jail property is in blue, and then in red, it's just a very general Blockhouse military area. We're still doing research, we're still trying to get some higher resolution scans and more maps to do some georeferencing to see if we can pin this down a little bit more, because this is bigger than an acre. But this gives you a general idea of the two areas where we're seeing the most potential for archaeological resources based on the results of our assessments so far. I think that's it. So with that, I will turn it back over to Miranda. Thank you everybody for listening to me blather on. And I look forward to hopefully chatting with a lot of you tonight as I make my rounds.
Thank you so much, Courtney. And just a reminder on those handouts that you got on the way in, there's a link to the survey. So there's questions on there for you to write in kind of an oral history or submit some files if you have some images or maps that you want to send to Courtney. Okay, so like I said, there's a lot to go through tonight. We're now going to get into exercise 1, but just before, I just want to do a quick reminder as to why we're doing these workshops. So quick graphic here, workshop 1, we're at workshop 2 right now. And everything that we're doing in both of these, we have 2 exercises for each workshop. They're going to start to inform these 4 options that we're working on. And that's actually the next workshop that we're going to be doing in November with you. So again, please keep in mind as we move into this next exercise that we are still holding the 4th option as no development. So tonight, we don't need to see no development on the exercises that we're doing. We are still going to be exploring that as an option. we need to work together on what these other three are, okay? So that's kind of the question marks are in these boxes, the three other options that we're gonna be exploring. So exercise 1 is all about the site. So in front of you on every table, I know it's flipped the other way, but we have a map of the site. We flipped it because they were all rolled up, so hopefully they're flat now. But this should look really familiar to everyone. What I'm gonna do first is just run through some of the features of the site, as well as some of the surroundings as well. And just like last time, the consultant team is gonna be at the tables, as well as Brian and I are gonna be floating around. So if you have any questions on reading this map, we're happy to answer them. I'm just gonna get your attention back on the screen here. I know it's exciting to look at the map. Okay, very first, the red boundary on the screen here is, of course, the boundary of the site. So that's in the heavy dashed line around your, on your map in front of you. One thing, of course, that's adjacent to our site, and we're just touching on the corner, is that historic Lunenburg grid that we talked about and that Julian brought up in his reflections of the in the first workshop, second exercise. Interesting about the site, we only touch a few of the streets. So we're backing onto other things, whether it be houses or trails or green. But we are touching a bit of Creighton Street, you can see there, a bit of Kemp Street, Blockhouse Hill Road, of course, and a small piece of Saw Pit Road, which you can see down the bottom here, just almost off the map. And everyone's familiar with the walking trail. So to the north of the site, we have the walking trail. So this highlighted red area here is a power easement. Anyone that's walked along the trail there, you'll be able to see the power lines running on the bottom of the site. That's what we have identified on your map.
Unbuildable.
Which is, yes, can be roads, but unbuildable otherwise. And of course, very obvious to anyone from here, around here, we have a significant slope. So it's sloping down away from Sylvia Park. So those are kind of the arrows that you see here. We're not going to get into too much detail here tonight, but just wanted to highlight that we're doing 3 different existing site zoning. We have them dashed on the plan in front of you, but don't worry, as the consultants, we're going to look into the details of what that means. We have a low, which is highlighted in blue, small piece of land that's low density, a medium density, and a high density. And just to highlight a gradient of green here on the site. This again is looking at existing vegetation of the site. So we have Sylvia Park and all of the other parks and trails, well-maintained public space, housed in that more bright or medium colored green. The other green that's on the site, lower brush, is accessible. Space, of course, green space, open. And then the darker green, which you're seeing outside of the site, as well as on the majority of the existing site, is that inaccessible green space that Courtney talked about exploring last week. Okay, so on to exercise 1. So, and like I said, in front of you, we all have this map, which is a heavier piece of paper. Everyone's been given some pencils, as well as some markers. And I'm sure what caught everyone's attention when they arrived tonight is you were also given a stencil. So the purpose of this first exercise is we want to see a visual of where you might want to have parks, green space. Is there an opportunity for some building blocks? Where might they go? How would you kind of draw this site together as a group at your table? The purpose of the stencil is merely to give you a sense of scale. So with everyone being completely freehand, it's really hard to judge how big a house is, how big a block is, how big a road is. So this is just a guiding tool for everyone at the table. At this scale, of course, the most important thing would be a road, a pathway, and a town walk. And so, like I said, we will be coming around to assist with using it. There's pencils which you might want to start with as a group and then get into your markers. But we have extras if you do make a mistake and need to go back. And just like we did last time, we are going to come back as a group. And we want to hear, so you're going to designate again a speaker to present your table's kind of map that's been drawn out. Right? Yeah, the next exercise will jump in scales, and we'll get into that after when we come back.
If you reminded us of what low density, medium density, and high density actually means in terms of, height of buildings,
We won't have to get into that level of detail right now, but we do understand that there's, the question was about the zoning. I don't want to confuse everyone with too much detail. We will kind of, as the consultants, look into what that means. We do know there's opportunities for different types of development in each
That's
zoning.
very important. The density is very, very important. Please address Rosalie's question on the density. We cannot do this without knowing the density.
Okay, trying to think, I can get. Started or?
Go back to that slide that you had. Yeah, that's all.
I think it'd be best if everyone starts, we could go around and bring some more information if there's more questions about the densities. I just don't have it on the screen right now.
I can tell you what it is. This one here.
For this exercise, it's really important to explore as a group where potential for building may be situated. So we'll turn on the lights and get started. Thank you.
We don't need a monitor. We're all.
One thing that I think is important for people to understand about the density question, just off the top, is there's a 34-foot height limit on the whole site. So just understand there's no tall buildings possible, period. No tall buildings are possible here.
These are.
Zoning, 34-foot height, absolute height limit.
Just starting my round. If anyone has archaeology, questions, I know. They were sort of like, I thought they were sort of like, they were here, but I haven't. It's on my phone. So even if we know it's yes, you do. Yeah, well, you know where I am. You can reach me. I do have information. That's where I am. Yes, I do.
Can you hear me now? Okay, it's probably not obvious what you're supposed to be doing right now, so I'm going to try to make it clear. this first exercise, you're gonna figure out where you think green space should be and where you think housing or other amenities could go. So it's basically, there's open space and there's housing and there can be other uses too considered, right? So where on the site would you put these things? How would you strategize about where things go? So if there's a place where you think housing could go, that's why we've included the template that shows a typical Lunenburg block. That block that you got on your little template there, that's the standard Lunenburg historic block. So if you put that where you think housing might go, or any development might go, you'll see how big it is and how much space it takes up. Just to give you a heads up about where we're going next, I know there are tables where there isn't going to be any development. Some people are going to not want any development anywhere. Other people are going to have some. And the second exercise, you see the little template that shows the typical city block. We're going to change to this. We're going to put another map down that's much larger scale, and you're going to put housing and potentially other uses in those city blocks where you've decided in this exercise they go. So if you got blocks of housing laid out in parts of the site in this part of the exercise, the next exercise is going to be to actually try to design that housing. Is it town housing? Is it single family housing? Are they small houses, big houses? Are they attached? Are they semi-detached? Are they stacked? What kind of housing should it be? So that's the next part. So if we know from the first part where you'd like to see housing, if anywhere, the second part is, what's it like? And we've shown you footprints of typical housing types that you can draw on the next map, the scale. And what you'll see very quickly is the site is very large. There's all kinds of room here. All right? Any other questions about this exercise, the first one?
We're going to come back together in 30 minutes. Thank you. On the 30 minutes. Thank you. Tyler, maybe you can grab the lights or turn it on and then off. Okay. Thank you, everyone. That was a great discussion. I'm going to get everyone to look back up here. Thank you. Like I said, and like we did last time, we want to hear from you. So this is a chance for each table to come up. We were able to snap a photo, which we're going to turn on the lights in a second, so that everyone's able to see. We'll try and keep this brief, but I know there's a lot to say about some of these maps that we had a chance to draw. I had a recommendation for table number 8, someone to leave, so if we start there, I believe that's the first one on the screen. Do we have a representative from table 8? Thank you.
Hello, so I'm representing table 8. I'll start off by saying that we did not have much consensus at our table. There were several people who just didn't want anything to happen in that area. But what we did was we tried to note that on our drawing so that they had their say. And then we put together a few things here where we added a road coming in from the bypass road and one coming up from Saw Pit Road, and then a mix of development and green space within here. So keep some green space up along the trail and the campground with some green space and room for that, for expansion if needed, and then basically residential development in between.
Thank you so much. Okay, I don't have a table number on this sheet. If you recognize this as your table. I heard someone that is us. Great, thank you.
It's really hard to see.
I know, you're actually can turn the light a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
We didn't end up drawing very much, but we had great discussions. And so our table, we talked a lot about, there was a fair bit of interest. Not all of us necessarily agreed entirely, but we went along with the idea that that maybe develop just part of it first and sort of see how it goes. And if there's still an appetite, then maybe another part later. So we said if we were to prioritize, we would prioritize the low density housing first. Because we think that has a better chance of having more affordability and also fitting more people in. And so it's lower down. And so we talked about potentially having a road connect from this side across. So it's also better in terms of the slope. And we thought it'd be great if the road could be behind the houses rather than in front. So there's still a view there. And then up here we were talking about maybe clusters of units in together. So this might be 4 units stacked on top of each other kind of thing. And we talked about shared green spaces. We liked the idea of lots of shared green spaces. Everyone at our table doesn't like lawns, doesn't want to mow lawns or have natural spaces, and I did not coerce anyone into saying that. That came from the table. It was genuine, but no one wants to mow lawns anymore apparently, so we said let's have lots of natural green space. And then we liked the idea, regardless also of connecting this part of the town down into the green space. So we said, well, why not have a green corridor that's a naturalized green corridor that has pedestrian access through for everybody, all the way from up top down to the bottom. And then that sort of then made the 2 quadrants up here, or 2 sections. And so we said if this was to be, this would be, I guess, the medium density area, so that would happen potentially later. We didn't talk about that much, but here we said, wouldn't it be a good idea? It's almost like ready already to do a pilot tiny house community, because it's just like already ready to go. And so that's kind of a low, like an easy thing to do quickly and provide year-round housing. It's almost ready. There's not so much to do to set up. And we talked a lot about Harborview Haven, if that becomes vacated at some point, that maybe that can sort of somehow connect in here, that this becomes a way to look at a project that could be an interesting connection here as well. So, did I miss anything else?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, back. Okay, anyone recognize this table? Again, I don't have a number.
Yeah.
We've got a diagram on the side here.
There, you wanna go?
Great. Do we have a volunteer?
The natural speaker.
Thank you.
So how we started was, we started by defining what we'd like to retain as green space. And so all of the green space is, that you can see. We also talked about the access roads. And so down at the bottom where the power easement is, we said, why wouldn't we take a road all the way across from there to Saw Pit? And then come down the same from I guess that's Creighton?
Yeah.
Yes, and come down again and meet with that one. And then what we talked about was coming up the hill from that bottom road with a couple more streets that would be dead end. And at this end, we would have pedestrian pathways and a buffer of green between this piece and the houses at the end of Hobson Street. We talked about a blend of housing. This is upside down for you, but this is a stacked townhouse concept that could fit into the property virtually anywhere. That could be blended with apartment block type housing in a very small scale, 2-story, 3-story, and that's it. Then we also talked about some cluster housing, and we looked it up online and found a reference to pocket neighborhoods, which is sort of a cluster of tiny homes around a common green space. So those are the kinds of things that we talked about at our table.
Just one thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
did I
we
forget
were
something?
mostly building on the steep part to protect the view. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, we've got another drawing here. Looks like, does anyone recognize this one? We have a road coming down, 10th Road. Looks like it says condo there, 3-story.
No, I think that's good.
Great, thank you. I should have asked everyone to put their table number on there.
Our starting point was obviously the same one as many of the others, and that is to keep the bit at the top of the hill clear of housing, because we want to preserve the views over to the back harbour and beyond from Sylvia Park. So we would want this to be green space and be genuinely accessible green space. The other thing about that is that the slope isn't as steep there, so it's easier to make it possible for a sort of recreational use than it would be if you tried to do that further down. We then envisaged that this section could be developed on a similar kind of line to this section of housing. We also pointed out that the use of land was very over-generous when that development was made in relation to existing land values. So it's got to be denser than that to work at all. So you could have a section there that somehow mirrored that, and then develop this in a more traditional kind of block version. We've drawn on some sort of town block amounts just to sort of show how they could be fitted in. Road access for this could be from here. There's also a need for road access for the main bit of the development, which could probably happen from here and one thing. And we also reckon there needs to be road access to the Sawpit Road Wharf, Wharf Road, because there absolutely must be two very separate ways in and out, because what we all saw, the Tantallon fire made that absolutely essential anywhere. And I think that's the main. Oh yes, and we quite like, if possible, to keep some or all of the existing campground, because that is felt to be an important community facility.
Okay, representative from this table.
Hi, you can pretty much tell what we thought. It says no change at all for five people out of the 6. There were six people at the table. And a few other things. We felt we didn't have, at least, I'm one of the 5. I don't think I had enough information to even pick, or even, I don't know anything about how steep a hill can be. I don't know anything about what you can build, what you can't build, what type of housing would affect the view. I don't know anything what you could do with this land, how steep is it, could you make a park there? I'm moving here with not enough information to make a decent decision about which option I would pick. And, you know, I would prefer that, well, one person at our table thought everybody should have their own map, a small map, so everybody at the table doesn't agree. So how can you possibly go up there and say, oh, this is our. And the other thing is, we have been told that the reason we absolutely have to do this is because we're going broke. Well, I don't have enough information to know if we're really going broke. And I also do not know what other places there we could do housing. If we need housing, why does it have to be here? That's the problem. What the person who wasn't part of the 5, the other person said, please show us your 3 projected developments. Then we could look at it and maybe at a table or at each of us could have a little map. And we could say, well, this part looks pretty good, but that part I wouldn't want to happen there, or maybe I could put a road here. I just feel like I was part of the 5, but I could be moved to part of not 5, but I can't do it without having enough information about a number.
You see, we don't have 3 schemes. We're going to have 3 schemes when we hear from you. We're going to have something to work with so that we can produce the 3 schemes that we can react to next time.
Yeah, but that's what I need. So I kind of feel like this exercise, my 3 hours, whatever, is sort of a waste of time for me. And I also feel a little bit manipulated to have this without any input from you that's real. This is a lovely map, and it's fun to talk about it if you like to, but it's not real information to make me a good decision.
Bravo.
That's
Okay, thank you for coming up here. We'll get to the next table. Okay, we've got some green and red on this map. Turn it here. It says option 4 with a heart through it.
That's me. Drive me as negative, so I'm here now. I want to be negative. Okay. Again, I echo the last speaker. It was really difficult. This is a drumline. We had no idea how, and I appreciate your problem too, Mr. McKillines, but we just cannot do that visioning without more information. So our group was, I mean, it's lovely to think of a road here and a road there and a road there and this and that, but it's just lovely. So we do want green space. We want it accessible. We want a lot of accessible green space, but we really want to go choose option 4. And I just thought I would explain how it's not just a hill. It came to being. And there is a Facebook group, I know, everybody's talking about it. It's called Friends of Blockhouse Hill. There was one night in March when there was a lot of debate going on. People were calling it scrubland, thorny, ugly. And the negative stuff was just pretty amazing, actually. Our Mi'kmaq friend chimed in and said, it's not just a hill. And that's where the words came from. It is not just a hill, it's a very spiritual, very cultural, very historic piece of land. And
it was a lovely exercise, but it was really difficult with all of that background in place.
Here. Okay, looks like, again, I'm starting our table number on this one. Parkland, it says parking for visitors. Do we have a representative to speak to this one?
Okay, so our group of.
Give me a microphone.
Hi, there were 8 at our table, 6 don't want any development on Blockhouse Hill. So the, one person wanted a little bit, and then Marilyn, she drew parkland on the top of the hill, and the green line, the solid green line here, designates housing to go down the back harbor part of the hill. And I believe she was talking about, what density, Marilyn?
It's a little awkward for me because I was told I shouldn't go up, so.
No, we were told if you weren't represented, by all means go up, but she's done her presentation.
Okay, I guess she didn't think about what type it was. And then, in further discussion, there was some talk about trails. So the wavy yellow lines are really just meant to represent that further trails in the land would be lovely. And then I will add my accountant's point of view, which is, in a perfect world, I'm one of the no development people, and in a perfect world, I'd like it to be a bit more accessible as well. But until the town has money for that, let's just leave it alone.
Yes.
And develop other places. And then it'll still be there when we have money, when we get our act together and get the town properly managed and go forward.
All right.
We'd like to give Marilyn the opportunity.
Yeah, come on up.
No. And also.
I appreciate this. I understand it's difficult having one representative per table. I know there's differing opinions in the room, so I know this is difficult to come up. I appreciate that everyone has either drawn something or said at least differing views on the maps, and we will do our best to analyze these moving forward. Okay, we have some arrows. It looks like a rink perhaps at the top. Do we have a representative from this table?
Yeah, I'll come up.
Thank you. Okay, it's so dark, I can't really see. Thank you.
Hey, yes, this is my table. However, that is not my hand. I was very fortunate because I had a lot of young, exciting people with a lot of imagination at my table, which I really appreciate. There's only one other person probably around my age, so it was a very creative process, which was a lot of fun for us. We really loved the idea of extending the green space from Sylvia Park over, and we quite imagined where the campground is. Whoever came up with the ice rink idea, we really embraced that. We thought it would be great to have a rink there through those winter months, even though, yes, it would have to be maintained. And then perhaps it could be a community event space in the summer, perhaps maybe a great place for Folk Harbor to set up their tent. We even felt, this building here, which is the Tourist Bureau, we thought, wouldn't that be lovely for that building to be repurposed? Right, so you could rent out skates there could be washrooms there, it could be a ticketing place, it could be many things, but it still has uses. That way, you don't take away the view from the highest part. We imagined, which I thought this was such a beautiful idea, a green buffer space all the way down there. Kind of like a botanical walking gardens, perhaps with some beautiful lavender, everything, just to give that beautiful buffer down the way. And we imagined a pedestrian walkway all the way down through here, down to Saw Pit. We thought there could perhaps be kayak rentals or maybe a bike rental. Now, as far as road access goes, we did, much like many others, have the idea of road access here and perhaps going all the way out to the other way of Saw Pit. We did acknowledge that there probably should be some road access this way. And of course, parking did come into play. We weren't 100% sure, but we acknowledged, parking is such a thing in Lunenburg anyway, that would have to be thought through before any of this took place. But what a lovely vision that was. Then we really felt, as far as the density of the housing, it would make perfect sense to have the highest density down below, perhaps with buildings that were like 4 apartments or 4 units per building, kind of stacked and tiered, as others had mentioned. And you just work your way up, so the medium density happens in the middle, and perhaps if there's any low density, that would be at the top, and that way we serve everybody and not just a choice few. And I want to thank my table. I thought you were very exciting to participate with. Thank you.
Table, we got a number here. Looks like table number 9. Do we have a representative? Great, thank you.
Well, hello. First of all, the card is being put before the horse. We had sent around and have a petition signed by 1,200 people that want a pause on any development on Blockhouse Hill until consensus is reached by the voting people of Lunenburg that we want to sell the hill. So in light of that, we chose option number 4, no housing development. And there were 8 people at our table. They got bored, they left. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
There's a couple we didn't get.
Okay, sorry, Matt was busy going around to photograph, so. I think we have maybe 4 tables left. I'm just gonna turn up the lights. Maybe you can just raise your hand if your table wasn't up there. Oh, thank you, Tyler. Okay, just wave your hands if your table hasn't presented yet. Okay. 4. Okay, looks like 4 left. Just one moment. Do we have someone able to speak to the table? Yes, thank you. Great. Table right here. I was like, how do we get that? Looks different on the screen.
Okay, obviously this is very difficult. So I'm here just reporting for the table of people that we had. We did have a very young family at our table with 2 children who we asked before they left if they had any thoughts, and
they just said on behalf of young families that they did support development. And so they gave us a few thoughts of theirs, so I felt I should mention them. And then we have people who've lived in Lunenburg a long time, and we've lived here a bit. So we had quite a mix at our table. And of course, we didn't agree on everything, but actually we moved it along and felt that this was just an initial thoughts on things. So like everyone else, we did talk about green space at the top and ways to get walkways down through. It's hard to we didn't sort of finish layout. We obviously had access roads like everyone else and ways to buffer existing homes that were there. And we also had, you can't see, but it says like a look off so that people could go and really look over everything. So these would be very low rise. And one of the benefits of having a hill, it's kind of like when you go to the theater, you can see mostly over the person in front of you unless they have a big hat on or a high roof in this case. One of the things that we did talk about were the hydrostones in Halifax. If any of you know the hydrostones were built after the Halifax explosion, and architects came and built what they called was a garden city. And one of the concepts of the hydrostone was that it developed community. So they specifically architecturally built, development-wise, built in aspects of things to make it a community, to keep green spaces, to keep trees, to keep people safe. They actually built it in. And one of the things they did was each block in between the houses across from you was have an actual green space. And to this day, one of the things that they planned was that space would be used by people. So there's people that still the kids go out and do their homework, people go out and throw the ball, people go out and actually put blankets down and have their lunches, things like that. It's a wonderful way to create community. And I know, I know how that works. So I know that there are ways to develop areas that can do that, rather than just having streets and houses and things like that. So I think we all thought that there might be ways, and we hope that there would be ways that professionals could build things into a space such as this, that we're very extremely fortunate to have, that we can respect some things from the past and do perhaps as they did in the past, like use some of these spaces as the town needed them, as we hopefully will happen in other parts of the town also. So we couldn't finish this off because I think it has to speak a lot to what a lot of people have talked about here, whether it's developed or not, that hopefully in current day we can do things that help keep our community wanting to be together, working together, hard like here tonight, but trying to find ways to move forward with some of this, and it's hard. Thank you.
Okay, okay, here we go. We've got a big green arrow connecting, looks like the top of the hill and the bottom. Which table do we have? Someone at the back? Who volunteered to speak to this one? Thank you. Oh, I flipped it the other way. Hold on. There we go, table 11.
Hi, so there was a lot of discussion at our table. Very interesting discussions about a lot of different concepts about what could be built there and how to build it, costs of things. I think, like most people discussed, that it was really important to not build at the higher section of the park and really extend Sylvia Park over, just to have that view of the back harbor and in the same way that we can see over the houses here, to see over whatever development is on the back side here, so that we can maintain the views that we have now. The walking trail obviously is super important, and I think we wanted to make sure that there was a nice buffer beside the walking trail, not similar to this, because I think a real failure in this zone here is the fact that the walking trail is exposed, there's no greenery, and it sort of jars you when you're on your walk, and all of a sudden you're not feeling like you're in nature again. So I think a nice green buffer zone there would be beneficial. And linking the two, obviously, to just provide access for people to enjoy both green spaces. We talked about extending Crichton because there is an extension there now. So it just seemed logical to continue that. And again, having an exit somewhere, we talked about over through here, but I think it would be too steep. So we're just talking about connecting to Soffit. Other than that, this was a controversial area. I think one member of our group wanted to see housing there. The rest did not want to see housing. Some wanted to leave the RV park. Others wanted to develop it into more usable, functional. I love your idea of a skating rink. I think those guys were a great table with a lot of great ideas. Nobody wants to see high-end housing. Nobody wants to see this kind of fabric to it. We all wanted to see something that was more affordable. I think Evan and our team, he drew little townhouses up here where you could see how you can get 4 townhouses in this area compared to the 2 single lots there. And if you put that in the context of the whole site, there's a heck of a lot of housing for people that can be developed and still maintain a lot of the green space and usable green space, because really nobody can access that. When I take my walks, I have to go all the way around to Soffit to get on the trail, so it'd be nice to have a link from the community down to the walking trail. Yeah, so a lot of different types of buildings that we didn't get a chance to put, but basically, multi-unit apartment buildings, townhouses, just affordable housing.
Okay. Green space, it looks like, with some arrows. Thank you for coming up. We've got one more table after this.
So this is the old and the new.
Yes.
And it's important to recognize that, because I think together, Jordan and I realized that we have differing viewpoints, because somewhat because we're at different stages of our life and where we are. The interesting thing was, we all disagreed with everything, almost through the whole thing. And then we said, oh, what the heck? Why don't we just draw some stuff? So Jordan said, well, I'm going to do it properly, and he did. And I said, well, I'm going to do it improperly, and I did. So very good.
So I'm going to apologize for the lack of detail, because we didn't start till late, because we had a great conversation between generations. I'm pro-development, being in the millennial generation and not being able to be in Lunenburg and seeing my friends push further and further outside of town. So in conversation with Letty, you know, I said, let's see the potential of the land. So we started drawing, okay? I'm coming in on Oxford Drive, I think it is, and we drew, I know it's hard to see, it's very faint, but we drew a road all the way along the right-of-way here. And in here I have blocks that represent, you know, sort of the same as in the in this part of town, which we could build in, and I just have roads in between. So Letty is pro green space, so I drew her a nice big block. You could probably fit 100 basketball courts in, but she then, which I didn't authorize, but she expanded it with these arrows. To which her compromise was all these homes, right sort of here, down there, which I'm not sure how we're gonna get power and water to, but we'll figure that out later.
So I was told that I had to follow the rules, and that area was not in, I couldn't do this to this area because that wasn't part of the area we're talking about. And I said, so I said, look, we already have buildings there, and they are going to be empty, and there may be an opportunity to do other housing. So I would suggest we do a tiny home area there and add a bunch more houses. And I think we both agreed that the water and sewage would be a problem, but I know there are good people around that will figure that out. And then, of course, we've got stay on the
can, I gave you the.
on the camp, yeah, he said the camper. I said as long as they pay their fair share of taxes, I think they should stay. And then, the one last thing I think, and I think it's the piece that brought us together, was the issue of having homes for people who are just starting out, young families, seniors, people with disabilities. We kind of forgot about the hill, quite frankly, and we thought about people and what we need. And we need housing desperately. And if it can't be here, it needs to be somewhere. We're all pro-development in that regard. And we need to have housing for people because we need young people. We need our seniors to be respected.
Just not there.
Great to hear your perspectives. Last table, let's see here. That is this one. And is there any table, please wave your hand if we didn't get to your table. I think we did it. Okay, last one. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Heather Smith. I'm here to represent Table 10, but I'm also here to represent my parents, Ben and Roxy Smith, and some of you know who they are, some of you don't. Because I really feel deeply that within this process, within the electoral process that was so technology driven, the unresponsiveness of council, even this whole process which is so inaccessible to older people, I really feel that our elders, instead of being respected, have been marginalized and disenfranchised. I really feel that council has stolen my father's voice, and I'm here to maybe give it back. So our group discussed what was proposed. We really feel that we haven't seen any evidence, nothing in writing, and nothing to prove to us that development on this hill would not threaten a lot that we in Lunenburg hold dear and want to have for all generations, including our UNESCO designation. So it is very difficult to envision housing on this real estate that is going to be affordable. I I have seen absolutely no evidence for it, and I've seen a lot of evidence against it. We had a very interesting conversation with Mr. McKay Lyons, who actually told us that affordable housing, or housing that is within reach of lower income Canadians, lower income Nova Scotians, is only achieved with heavy government subsidization. That's not on the table here. That's not being discussed. I will talk to you about our vision of Blockhouse Hill. We see it as a place that is for everybody. We see it as a place, a green space. We see it as a place for wildlife. We see it as a place where we respect our heritage. And we also look to the future for everybody. We would see it as a place where we cherish and also develop and possibly even monetize. If we want to talk about dollars and cents, monetize our World Heritage destination or designation, which would actually bring in more income for our younger citizens, for the next generations. Because make no mistake, if we don't look in a more proactive way to the future, we will not have the kind of future that our forefathers and our fathers and our mothers envisioned for this town. So please, let's not be the generation that messes it up.
Yes. Bravo.
So what we saw was, as I said, open green space, perhaps an interpretive center, perhaps some botanical gardens. We thought the campground was actually a very accessible place to welcome visitors, and welcome visitors that perhaps didn't have the sort of incomes who could afford expensive bed and breakfasts or hotels or other lodgings, or the Airbnbs that perhaps we should be looking at charging a bit of an occupancy tax. Why is Halifax the only municipality in Nova Scotia that charges an occupancy tax for Airbnbs? Great way to monetize and get some money for future generations. This here, so we do see some walking trails here. This was where Mr. McKay Lyons tried to put in some housing, and we had to remind him that no means no. We don't want housing here. We were accused actually of NIMBYism, of not wanting to have that. That's not the case at all. There are lots of other places in town where we could build housing, or just outside town where we could build housing for all of our citizens. But there's no evidence that this is going to be the spot. So thank you for listening. Please have this as a place that will and can enhance our town for all generations. Thank you.
Okay, wow, thank you everyone. That is not easy to take it up in front of your own community. I know there's some opposing opinions about this, absolutely. It's been an amazing discussion tonight. I've got to circulate around, hear different sides. Well done everyone for getting up and speaking in front of everyone. I know that took a lot longer, but we also, part of this is hearing from you, so we don't want to stop or stop anyone from speaking on behalf of their table. So I'm just going to see next exercise. I'm not sure we're going to have time for. So we're just take 5 minutes and discuss at your table. I will come back to you. Thank you very much.
What's your date?
Hey folks, we know it's getting late. I know everybody's getting tired and we're not gonna get to do the second part that we planned tonight. But what we will do is take note of everything that's been said and we're gonna generate those options and a wide enough range of options for you to be able to critique it at the next workshop, so you've got something concrete. The point's about, we're trying to ask you to do something that's hard to do. You're not civil engineers, you're not architects, you don't know the building codes, there's so many things that we probably asked you to do something that you can't really easily do. So if we do our professional bit and show you options, then you can respond to those, and I think fair comment about more tangible, we're asking you to do something that's too hard. Thank you. So we come back, because we will have schemes. You said you wanted to see them. We're going to do them, and we're going to make sure that there's a range of schemes that reflects the conversation, what you guys have said tonight. So thanks a lot.